International Pacific Halibut Commission. We're delighted to be here. I'd like to make a special welcome to the Canadian delegation, one of the new Canadian delegation members who will be introduced shortly by the Vice Chair. It's his first trip to Alaska, so welcome to Anchorage. We're pretty proud of the state and the city, so I hope that you have a good time. Special welcome to some former commissioners who we have in the audience. Don McLeod from Canada, ex-commissioner. Chris Norris, who served on, as a commissioner for several years ago. Welcome. Thanks for coming and supporting us. On the U.S. side, our fisheries regulations work only in partnership with the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, so we have a number of North Pacific Fishery Management Council members in the audience. Ed Dersham is here. Dan Hull is here. I saw Sam Cotton yesterday. I don't know if he's here yet this morning or not. The Commissioner of Fish and Game was also a council member. Cora Campbell is here in attendance. And I'm not quite sure how to announce him, but Clem Tillion's here. So this I believe is quite a collection of celebrities and important people, and I think it is a reflection of the importance of this particular meeting. I appreciate the attendance here. This is a full room. We appreciate that people are interested and will show up as we go through the deliberations this week. It's the users of the resource, if they aren't interested, it makes the work very hard. The work's going to be hard anyway. It's going to be a tough meeting. It's a tough time with the decline in the exploitable biomass of halibut. So it's going to be a hard work this week and through the next year, but we appreciate your attendance. We will have, to support our work, the deliberations of the processor advisory group and the conference board, so we look forward to that, and we appreciate the work that they're going to put in for us. In addition to that, there's been a lot of work done already by the staff, which we're grateful for, but also by the stakeholders who have paid attention to the processes that are leading up to this meeting. So thanks for coming. We're looking forward to a productive meeting. With that, I'd like to introduce the other U.S. commissioners. I'm Jim Balsiger. I work with the National Marine Fishery Service out of Juneau. I've been the U.S. Government Commissioner since 2001, so this will be my 12th meeting, I believe. Right to my right is Mr. Ralph Horde. I think he lives in Hawaii now. and I only mention that so I could say Mr. Philip Westinkoff, who lives also on an island. He's from Pribilof Island, St. Paul in the Bering Sea. And so we've been a team together for a number of years now, so we're looking forward to this. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Laura Richards, who's the Vice Chair of the Commission this year, and for some remarks and introducing your delegation.
Good morning, everyone, and again, it's a really great privilege to be out here in Alaska, and we very much look forward to the meeting and really appreciate all the wonderful attendance, and seeing all these faces here. It just tells us how important this meeting is for everyone. And I would also really like to acknowledge all the Canadians who came to this meeting, because I know it's quite a journey for many of you, and we really appreciate your interest, and you're taking the time and to come and work with us at this meeting. We recognize that there are going to be quite a few challenges and a lot of interest in this meeting, which is probably why you're all here. I'd also just like to acknowledge all the work that's gone into preparation for this meeting. I know that many of you spent some time listening to the previous webinars, submitting comments, and in Canada working with us to help us all prepare for this meeting, and say recognizing, as the chair has already mentioned, the challenges that we're going to have to face in the next couple of days. I'd like to introduce our commissioners. With me is Mr. Michael Pearson, who is new for this meeting and is from the Fisheries and Oceans in Ottawa, in the Director General in the International Affairs Group, and also Gary Robinson, who has stood with me as commissioner for about 6 or 7 years now, and really appreciate all the help that Gary has given us through these years. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Richards. Looking through the audience here, I don't think I mentioned Mr. Duncan Fields, who is also a North Pacific Fishery Council member. So thanks for showing up, Duncan. You may recall that last year's annual meeting, Mr. John Field from the U.S. State Department mentioned briefly a performance review that the Halibut Commission was going to undertake. This is over a few years ago, the United Nations, the FAO, both identified the need to examine the procedures and processes that were used by international fish commissions. The International Pacific Halibut Commission is the oldest of the fishery commissions that the United States is involved in. And the commissioners, the 5 of us at least, and that are here now, recognize that over those 80-some years of work, there may be policies, procedures, other things that should be looked at to see if the Commission is working in a modern way, carrying out its responsibilities. So to that end, we have contracted with a firm called Concur, who is going to interview stakeholders and provide some summary overviews and insights to the way we do our business relative to the way other people do business and good practices for conducting, managing public resources. Their names are Bennett Brooks and Scott McCreary, and they're both here in the audience today. We're going to let them talk to you for a few minutes about what they're doing, but we've pretty much given them free reign of the place, so there's no place that's secret because we want them to look at everything we do, so they might be in and out. They're not with the CIA or anything like that. They're just trying to make sure we're carrying out our business correctly. So if you see them around, smile at them. They might have a question for you. But Bennett and Scott, if you would give us a few words on how you're doing, we'd appreciate it.
Good morning. I'm Scott McCreary. This is my colleague Bennett Brooks. Jim, thanks very much. I don't think I've ever been introduced in quite that way. That's pretty impressive. So just a very few words on the structure of the performance review. As Jim said, what we're doing is taking a look at the policies and procedures, looking at issues like stock assessment, processes of stakeholder engagement, how the Commission goes about its deliberations, the science and research plan, and related elements of how the Commission does its work. And the pillars of our inquiry, there are really 4 things that we're doing. Jim mentioned interviews. We are conducting a series of about 40 or so confidential, in-depth interviews. We've done already about 14 of those and are continuing that process over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Another strand of our work is to really examine the Commission's documents. A third is to take a look at analogous fishery management organizations to look at best practices. And then obviously, as Jim said, we're observing the meeting. So we're here, we're going to be in and out of the various meetings, and we're not going to interject or intervene, but we're just here to learn and watch and observe. So that's the basic flow of our work. A little more on the timeline. We hope to complete our confidential interviews in the next probably 3 weeks. We will be drafting a report of our findings that will be circulated to those people that we interview to confirm that our analysis is accurate, and then we're scheduled to come up with a final report with both findings and recommendations by the end of April. So it's a fairly quick timeline. So that's a very quick overview. Hopefully that's sufficient, and we will be briefly in both the conference board and the PAG later this afternoon.
Thank you, Scott. Bennett? So, Dr. Lehman, the Director's remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things I'd like to start off with is to brief you on this year's Scholarship Committee meeting. And the winner of the IPHC Merit Scholarship this year is a chap named John Scott. He's from Girdwood, Alaska. As is typical in these scholarship deliberations, we usually have a very strong suite of candidates that come through this, but John was exceptional, I think, even in recent history in terms of the qualifications he brings to this. He's already started school. He's enrolled at University of Alaska Fairbanks. He's doing a double major in geology and biology with a minor in mathematics. I don't know what he does with his spare time, but he's there. And unfortunately, he is unable to be with us, probably because of coursework, but John does send his thanks very much to the Commission, and we wish him the best in that. This year we've done a couple of things differently to try to help out on this. We have on the outside table a set of handouts that are kind of a guide to the IPHC meeting and a guide to the IPHC itself, and we encourage you to pick those up. There's also a list of acronyms or abbreviations, and for those of you who've been to our meetings before know that this is a pretty acronym-rich environment that we work in here, so that's also in the Blue Book. You can get some background to the acronyms that might come up in the course of our discussions. A couple of brief remarks on sort of where we are this year in terms of our process. There has been quite a bit of time pressure in us trying to get information ready for you for this meeting. We had some late analyses that came to us, which I think we have not satisfied ourselves that we've gone through and done a full analysis of those results. And we've got a lot of work in front of us in 2012. We're going to be highlighting to you some things this year that have been with us for a while, in particular the retrospective issue. Juan Valero is going to be talking about that. It's something that's been with us for a while, and what we're bringing forward to you for consideration and thinking about in the future and for ourselves in terms of the work we need to do is looking at that retrospective issue in detail and what some of the effects and impacts of that might be. Again, we have a lot of work to do in 2012 to deal with this thing. We're not making recommendations this year based on that kind of analysis. We still have a great deal of work to do on it. But I think the thing that has come forward to us continually over the last while too is just the very short time frame we have to get things ready for you on this. We essentially close off our data in something like 31st of October, and Stephen has about 3 weeks to try and get the assessment finished and ready for you and make recommendations at our interim meeting. That's a very tight time frame, and we have been talking with the commissioners at a series of retreats over the last couple of years trying to figure out if there's a better way for us to do this. We don't have a solution for it as of right now, but it's something that we're trying to put some effort into. So we'll be doing our presentations this morning as usual. We will go through our presentations, and then there will be time for a question and answer period afterwards. Last year, I think we did not have near enough time to do that, and we've tried to both start earlier this year and shorten up the number of presentations we're giving to you to make sure that we have that opportunity for the Q&A at the end of our session here. So that's my remarks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Lehman. So we started just a few minutes late this morning, and the reason was we are actually having this session go out via webcast thing. So this is being broadcast across the web. I don't know how that works, but we're doing it. So we're also going to have Thursday's meeting with PAG and the conference board will be webcast, as will the Friday morning meeting. So there's no cameras. You don't have to behave because of that, but and there's no. I don't think there's any audio either. But at least what we see here will be seen quite broadly. Thank you. So with that, shall we do the presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, if you could invite you folks to adjourn to the reserved seats down there so you get a better view of things. You can follow along in your Blue Book. This is a well-known thing of Blue Book in our meetings. So each one of the presentations has background material. You will generally see an abbreviated form of the material in the Blue Book in the presentations, but please follow along there. There's also some blank pages in here so you can write down questions as we're going through. So the first presentation will be by Heather Gilroy, who will review the 2011 fisheries.
Good morning. Am I loud enough in the back? Okay, great. Well, I might be loud enough, but the PowerPoint's not working, so hold on. You have to point it?
Please bear with us a second. Apparently there's some communication issue with the webinar versus what you're seeing in front of you here. Neither Heather or I sing or dance, so you'll just have to be patient.
Let's tell jokes, so not much. All right. We're ready. Okay, I'm going to be going over the 2011 fishery. And the Commission's goal, oh, now it's not working up here, Tom. It's not working up here. Oh, well, I'm going to have to turn, oh, it is now. Okay, the Commission's goal is to account for all removals, and in doing this, we try to use scale weight or accurate scale weights or scientifically based estimates. This is necessary for stock assessment and for the allocation programs, and we're always working to improve the estimates and working with other agencies. Well, this is going to be a long 20 minutes. I've been given 20 minutes. Hopefully this isn't counting. Doesn't work. Oh, there. Okay. So when looking at total removals, this is from 1962, and that was the first year we did bycatch accounting. And in the late 1970s, the total removals were around 40 million pounds. In the mid-2000s, it was 90 to 100 million pounds. And for the last 7 years, the total removals have been coming down. In 2010, they were 74 million pounds. And 2011, they were 60.5 million pounds. This is the list of the total removals. And it gives you the pounds by millions of pounds for each removal, as well as a percent for the total. Commercial catch was 38.8 million pounds. Bycatch was 10 million pounds. And we started counting for that in the 60s. Sport catch was 7.5 million pounds. We started accounting for that in the 1970s. And each of those removals I'll be talking a bit more about later in the talk. Wastage was 2.3 million pounds, and this is the loss of halibut from the commercial halibut fishery. It's from hooking injuries, and so it's for the sublegal fish that are hooked and die, and also for lost gear. And wastage is 1.2 million pounds, personal use was 1.2 million pounds, and personal use is subsistence fisheries in each area. And lastly, IPHC research was 0.7 million pounds, and this is from our stock assessment surveys. So the total for 2001 was 60.5 million pounds. Just to go over a couple of the definitions you'll see in the blue book and out on the boards. The commercial fishery size limit is 32 inches, so we use O32 for halibut that are 32 inches and over, U32 for halibut under 32 inches, and we have another breakdown at 26 inches. So U26 for under 26, and then a breakdown between 26 and 32 inches. The Commission doesn't do the allocation programs. Allocations are by each government, and allocations programs can be to individual, to user groups, or within an IPHC management area. I will just go over each of these programs. Starting in Area 2A, which is Washington, Oregon, and California, the Pacific Fisheries Management Council has a catch sharing plan that allocates to the user groups, and in this area the user groups are sport, commercial, and Treaty Indian. The Commission adopts a catch limit for all of it, and a catch sharing plan divides between the user groups. In 2011, the catch was 3% over the 0.91 million pound catch limit. The second allocation program is developed by Department of Fisheries and Oceans, or DFO, and 2011 was the 8th year of the program. IPHC adopts a catch limit for the sport and commercial users, and DFO's allocation program allocates 12% of that to the sport fishery. In 2011, the catch was 3% over the 7.65 million pound catch limit. And this program, the allocation program, is currently under review by the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, and it is expected that an announcement will be made before the 2012 season. An allocation program that is done in the Bering Sea is for Area 4C, D, and E, and the Commission sets a catch limit for the areas combined, and the North Pacific Fishery Management Council has a catch sharing plan that divides the catch between these different regulatory areas. When you're looking at the tables in the blue book, you will notice that in some cases the catch is substantially over one of these areas, and this is allowed by regulation. IPHC and NIMS regulations allow for C quota share to be caught in 4D and for D CDQ to be caught in 4E. And the 2011 catch was 8% under the catch limit. The last allocation program I'm going to talk about is a guideline harvest level, and this was a program developed by the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council. It was implemented in 2003, and it is a program for the guided sport fishery. The GHL adjusts with changing halibut abundance, and it adjusts by course increments. In 2011, the harvest was under the GHL for both areas, and I'll be discussing these a little bit more in detail. There's another allocation program that the North Pacific Management Council has developed and NIMS is implementing, which could be a possible catch sharing program between the commercial and sport guided users. I'm going to move on and talk about the commercial fisheries, and I'll start in the south in Area 2A. And there's a directed commercial fishery down there with, last year we had 2 openings, which were 10-hour openings with fishing period limits. The previous year we only had 1, but in general we have 2 to 6 openings. And the catch was 5% over the catch limit. The next commercial fishery down there is a incidental halibut with salmon troll season, and this opened on May 1st and closed on May 28th. The restrictions were 1 halibut to 3 Chinook plus another halibut, and it was expected that the catch limit was taken at the end of May, so the fishery was closed, but upon reevaluation, it was discovered that 2,500 pounds were left. So the fishery was reopened July 29th and ran through the end of October. And the end of October was when the salmon season closed. There was a greater restriction during this time with 1 halibut allowed per 7 consecutive days starting on a Friday. And to track the catch closely, Oregon had a call-in program. In the end, the salmon fishery closed and the halibut catch was 8% under the catch limit. The treaty Indian fishery was shorter in 2011 than in 2010, and this fishery is a directed fishery as well as a restricted fishery with vessel limits of 500 pounds. And the catch was 12% over the catch limit. I'll just talk briefly about a program in Area 2B. This is the Integrated Fisheries Management Plan, and this is 2011. It was the 6th year of the program. It became permanent in 2010, and this program has quotas for all species, and the quotas are transferable. It has 100% at-sea monitoring, and this monitoring is with EM, and the EM data is compared to the logbooks, and 100% dockside monitoring where the vessels, when they offload, the observers monitor their catch. So all vessels in the BC commercial fishery, the vessels are accountable for their catch and their discards. Just looking at the catch relative to the catch limits for all regulatory areas, at least the commercial catch, in 2B, 2C, 3A, and 3B, the catch was either 1% under or 2% under, depending on reg area. And what I've listed here is the adjusted catch limits. The adjusted catch limits are also in the tables, and that is the Commission set catch limit with adjustments made to the underage and overages programs. And how do these compare to 2010? In 2010, we were within 1% for all 4 of these areas, and in 2B and 3A, we were slightly over. Moving on to the Aleutian Islands and Bering Sea, Area 4A, we were 5% under, not quite as close as in 2010 when we were 3%. In 3B, we were 7% under, and this is quite a bit closer than in 2010 because 2010 we were 17% under that area. And lastly, I've already mentioned 4C and D. 4CDE, we were 8% under, which was the same amount we were under in 2010. The quota share season dates, the quota share in Alaska at least was developed in 1995, and the season dates have ranged from February 28th to March 21st, with the opening in 2011 of March 12th. The closing dates have only been 2 different dates, generally November 15th, but we closed on the 18th last year as well as in 2002. I'm going to move on and talk about the sport fishery. And the 2011 sport fishery was 7.5 million pounds that I mentioned. And this is 4% under 2010. And it's come down from the 10 million pounds from 2008. This graphic shows you the season dates for the last 3 years by area. And in 2A, the seasons are set by a catch sharing plan, so they're not in IPHC regulations. And the opening date has ranged from April 21st to May 1st, and the season closes on October 31st. And it's hatched because the fishery isn't open every day. There are certain days per week that this fishery occurs. IPHC regulations set the sport season for British Columbia and Alaska as February 1st with a closing date of December 31st. And the governments can be more restrictive. And in Canada, Canada has more restrictive regulations. So for 2 years, the opening was March 1, and in 2011, the sport fishery opened on March 1. And the season closed earlier in 2 years, and in 2011, the sport fishery in BC closed on September 5th. Alaska has chosen not to change any of the dates, so there has not been any. The date has been February 1st to December 31st in all 3 years. Okay, I'm going to talk about each sport area separately. And in Area 2A, as I mentioned, it's part of a catch sharing plan. And the total catch was 4.6% under the allocation. There's in-season management, and for this area, the catch sharing plan divides the area into 6 sub-areas, and 4 of the sub-areas were under their allocation. 2 sub-areas, there's not actually in-season management during the year. What they do is they set the season and the season fishing days and the amount of catch prior to the opening and let it run for the season. And in one area, the southern sub-area, which is Northern California's southern Oregon, there was exceptional fishing this year for that area at least, and it was recognized partway through the year that the catch would be over the allocation, but there was no method for closure. So this will be reviewed in 2012. Moving on to Area 2B, there were a couple of management programs that were in place in Area 2B, and this was implemented by Department of Fisheries and Oceans. The first one was an experimental leasing program, and this allowed sports sector to lease commercial quota share. There was an online application process, and it was expected to be market-based. In the end, 4,000 pounds were leased to the sports sector, but very few fish were caught. The other management regulations that went into place by DFO were the bag limit was 1 fish, the possession limit was 2 fish, and as mentioned, the season closed on September 5th. The allocation for this area was 0.948 million pounds, and that's the 12% of the combined catch limit set by IPHC, and the catch exceeded the allocation by 22%. DFO manages this fishery, and they estimate it by overflights, vessel counts, creel sampling, and lodge logbooks. And some of this data is self-reported from the lodges. Moving on to Alaska, ADF&G provides IPHC with the Alaska estimates, and we usually get a final estimate for 1 year. So we got the final estimate for 2010 at 6.3 million pounds. And the projected estimate from last year's was 5.9 million pounds. They have a program for estimation that's separate for the guided and the unguided sector. The guided sector, they are required to do logbooks, and they keep numbers of fish in their logbooks. And for the private sector, the numbers come from a statewide harvest survey. They use average weights in both cases, and these from creel sampling that takes place at public sites. I'll talk about the different management programs by area. And so starting in Southeast Alaska, or Area 2C, the guided fishery, as I mentioned, it's managed to a GHL. And the restrictions this year were a 1 fish bag limit with a maximum size of 37 inches. There were no skipper or crew fish, and there were line restrictions. What we saw in the end was a substantial decrease in the mean weight for fish landed. It was 9.4 million pounds, or 9.4 pounds, down from 26.4 pounds. But the number was fish caught was similar. In the unguided fishery, there were no additional management restrictions. The daily bag limit was 2 fish. The mean weight was similar to last year at 16.7 million pounds, and the number of fish increased by 6.5%. In areas 3A and 3B, I'll talk about the 3A first, and the guided and unguided fisheries had the same restrictions of 2 fish daily bag limit. The number of fish increased by 6%, and the average rate was similar at 14.2%. In areas 3 and 4, it's the same daily bag limit of 2 fish. There's a slight increase over 2010, but these ports are very remote, and there's not a lot of sport fishing that occurs. This gives you the Area 2C GHL and the harvest. For the GHL was in place since 2003, so it gives you the 9-year projection or 9-year picture. And the orange bars are the catch, and the green or the blue dots are the GHL. So the first year, the harvest and the GHL were very similar. The next 7 years, the catch was over the GHL, and substantially in some years. In 2008, it was 115% over. And in 2011, last year, it was substantially under. It was 51% under the GHL. This shows you Area 3A, the harvest relative to the GHL. And as you can see, the GHL hasn't changed over this time frame. Even though the halibut abundance has changed, the increments are coarse, so there was no change in GHL. The catch was close to the GHL for the first 6 years of the program. It was slightly over in 2007 by 9%. In the last 3 years, the catch was 20 to 26% under the GHL. The last removal I'll talk about is bycatch mortality, and this is the loss of halibut from other commercial fisheries. The estimate for 2010 was 10 million pounds. This is a decrease of 6% from 2010, the lowest since 1986, and down from the 20 million peak in 1992. Oops. Two programs that I'm going to talk about that take place. One was implemented by the Pacific Fisheries Management Council for Area 2A. It was implemented in 2011, and there was individual bycatch quotas for a rationalized groundfish trawl fishery. This program had real-time accounting and 100% observer coverage, so there were incentives for vessels to decrease their bycatch, and we did see this. The bycatch mortality decreased by 70% to 0.09 million pounds. The last program I'm going to talk about is the one in the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council. It's currently under developed by National Marine Fisheries Service, expected to be implemented in 2013 or 14. And it's a restructuring of the observer program, and it's expected that all groundfish fisheries will be covered. The new coverage there will be ex-vessel fee-based, and there's a sampling plan being developed by NEMS. The expectation is that the halibut fishery will be observed. Not all vessels. It will be depending on vessel size. And we should see improved bycatch estimation for fisheries that had no coverage or low coverage previously. And that's it for total removals.
Great. Thanks very much, Heather.